Hello and welcome to October's IBMS Pod. In this episode, we're joined by Cancer Genomics Project Manager Deborah Lakeland, after which we catch up with Charlotte Felton to discuss public engagement. But first up, as always, hot off the press, here are the news headlines.
IBMS fellow Professor Tony Rhodes has been appointed the new editor of our journal, the British Journal of Biomedical Science. Following his appointment, Tony told the IBMS, "It is truly a great honour to take on the role of editor. I hope to widen the scope of the journal and importantly ensure that it remains a journal of the practicing biomedical scientist."
We look forward to seeing many of you in Birmingham next year for Congress 2022. Be sure to register soon to take advantage of the early booking rates, which close on the 31st of October.
Thinking of submitting a poster for Congress? If you've been working on something that is novel, interesting and relevant to biomedical science that you think others would like to know about, we want to hear from you. The deadline to submit your poster is the 15th of October.
Congratulations to all of the winners of the 2022 Mary McDonald Bursary, who were announced last month. The bursary sponsors free places for non-HCPC registered members to attend the Biomedical Support Staff Program at IBMS Congress. Visit our website to find out more about all of our stories.
Okay, today on the IBMS Pod, we are joined by Deborah Lakeland. Now, Deborah is a Cancer Genomics Project Manager at the Lancashire and South Cumbria Cancer Alliance, but she has worn and continues to wear many different hats. So, Deborah, can you please give us a quick overview of your career and what you do at the moment?
Yes. Hi, thank you, Rob, and thanks for the introduction. So I'm a healthcare scientist and a biomedical scientist by definition. I have over 30 years experience working in clinical laboratories in the NHS. I started out in transfusion and haematology and coagulation in South Wales and migrated eventually into immunology. I came back to work in the Northwest. And then I had the opportunity to work on the 100,000 Genomes Project and into the wonderful world of molecular pathology and genomics. And last year I was doing coronavirus testing and reporting testing surveillance data to the government hub. So I have had, as you say, a lot of hats during that 30-year career.
And as well as all the clinical work you do a lot of leadership, networking, mentoring. Can you tell us a bit about that and how and why you got into that side of things?
Yes, so I have undertaken a CSO-wise leadership in healthcare science development program. And I needed a project for that, which I liaised with my local football team, Preston North End Football Club, and they have a community and education trust. And between us, we created a program of genomics education, which we developed, that was delivered in schools in Preston. So kids got to learn about genomics and they got to do DNA extraction on their spit and make necklaces and bracelets and generally learn about, how they come to be and how DNA affects their health, that kind of thing. But also got an experience of how to be a healthcare scientist as well in schools, and it went down really well. I also lead a molecular pathology education program within my immediate network. So this is to upskill my pathology colleagues and to introduce them to the concept of genomics and the advances that will likely come into their practice in the fullness of time. I've liaised with the Genomic Laboratory Hub in Manchester, and we created a genomics masterclass, which all cancer professionals in the Northwest were invited to, and there were 250 people registered for that event. I've delivered talks at national oncology conferences, talking about how genomics is driving change in personalised medicine. So, and I mentor biomedical scientist students that are starting out as where I did 30 years ago.
And what drives all this, Deborah? Because there's so much going on there. Is it a love of genomics, or is it a love of communication, or is it people? What makes you do it?
I think it's a love of genomics. I think, a bit of a genomics geek now. It really is going to transform healthcare. So I'm eager to get the message out so that people who will encounter this in clinic appointments will have understanding, both from the patient perspective and also from the professional perspective, to be informed how to have those conversations around genetic testing. So we're at a point now where through the 100,000 Genomes Project, where whole genome sequencing, which is sequencing 3 billion A, T, C, and G DNA bases, has become a routine thing in the NHS, whereby people with rare diseases can find out what is the underlying genetic cause of the disease. And often these are patients that have been on a diagnostic odyssey. So they've been bounced around different medical specialties, and it's not been clear as to what their diagnosis is. But increasingly now, with whole genome sequencing, they're able to get a diagnosis and sometimes a treatment from that. With cancers, we're able now to determine where people might have adverse drug reactions to anti-cancer therapies. And this information is derived from their genetics. So if their genetic makeup is kind of incompatible with the drug, we can tell that in advance, so that we identify those people that are at risk, and they then can have an alternative treatment. Also, we can also use genetic information to identify inherited cancers and those patients at risk of developing those cancers in advance of that happening, so they can have increased surveillance and monitoring, and where cancer is detected earlier, there is more opportunity for successful treatment.
And the work you're describing and the area of genomics is incredibly complex. I've written about it, I've edited copy, I still don't fully understand it and doubt I ever will. How on earth do you manage to, when you talk about outreach work where you're working with schools, how on earth do you communicate such a complex topic in a way that can be digestible by people who aren't coming with the kind of background you've got? I mean, is that where we talked about, you mentioned football earlier. Do you use stuff like that as a means to communicate scientific information? How do you go about it?
I think it's just distilling it down into its most basic form, really, and using gameplay as well. So, for example, the concept of genetic sequencing is all, letters in a sequence one after another, and using beads, different coloured beads on a cord that follow a pattern. So if you're given a tiger DNA pattern is a red, yellow, blue, green. And, it's just sort of getting children used to the concept of different letters in a sequence, and different sequences code for different outcomes. And that's gone down really well.
And some of your kind of networking leadership work has been around kind of trying to get women into STEM as well. Why do we need more women in STEM, and what kind of impact is that going to have when you are successful and we do have more women?
Yeah, this is a really good point, Rob. Thank you for mentioning that. So obviously, women are a large part of the healthcare workforce, but they are very underrepresented in STEM careers and also in leadership roles as well. So I'm obviously very keen to where I can signpost the great work that women in leadership roles do. And also, this is where I got the opportunity to do the leadership development course with CSO WISE team. And that's certainly opened a lot of doors for me and developed my own individual leadership potential. I'm also in talks to develop some learning with Newcastle University. They have a program of promoting women in science. And yeah, I'm just really keen that women, we are half the population on the planet, and we should be given more opportunity. And where we are shining and excelling, we should be shining a light on that.
Brilliant. And just quickly before I pass you over to Jordan to talk about genomics a bit more, if someone's listening and they're interested in leadership, what one piece of advice would you give them? What one thing would you say can make someone a good leader, or that they should think about before becoming a leader?
So I think a good leader is someone who has a positivity about them and is able to win others over and is very enthusiastic about their field of work and can carry that enthusiasm in the team and take that team with them to innovate and to grow both themselves and the service that they're providing.
Brilliant. On that nice positive note, Deborah, I'm going to pass you over to Jordan.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Jordan.
So you've touched just now on genomics medicine and how we'd be using information about a person's genes to help improve clinical outcomes and improve their medical care. And I know you were involved in the 100,000 Genomes project of the government, which aimed to sequence 100,000 patients' whole genome. So could you tell me a little bit more about that project and your role within it?
Yes, so I was seconded in the Royal Preston Hospital to set up pathways and processes and a laboratory that could facilitate access to whole genome sequencing as a new standard of care in the NHS for patients with rare diseases and cancers. And this was a program that went on for a couple of years. I think they did well over 100,000 genomes in the end, but it meant that I needed to set up from scratch standard operating procedures, source equipment, create working relationships with research and surgical and pathology teams, and network as well with other laboratories that were coordinating these requests. We did DNA extractions on bloods and tumour tissue, and these extracts were sent off then for sequencing at a central biorepository. And those reports have came back, and in some cases have identified genes of clinical significance and altered the clinical management of the patient pathway. There's also, this is a really great model because where gene-drug pairs or gene-disease pairs haven't been established that can be acted on in a clinic, that information is fed into a research database, and researchers around the world can access that and use that to increase knowledge about what is clinically relevant. So it's a really exciting development for the NHS that patients that sign up to whole genome sequencing, even if they themselves don't benefit immediately from the findings, as new information comes to light in the research domain, it may well change the course of their management in time, or may inform the care of someone else.
Is the project still ongoing, or has it?
I think that's closed now, but on the back of that, we we've now rolled that service out into the routine practice. So from April this year, the National Genomic Medicine Service formed, and a huge state-of-the-art test repertoire was launched in April. And that's online, and you can view that and see all the weird and wonderful ways in which a genome can be interrogated, and all the different methodologies in use as well. It's quite a heavy read. So, but a lot of what I do signposts people, clinicians, to that, and gives them tools which weren't available before. So, for example, we've had a clinician who had a patient with a sarcoma that was not very well defined.
Right.
We made an inquiry with the histopathology laboratory, who did some literature researching and discovered that for this particular type of sarcoma, there was a potential treatment, but there was some genetic testing needed. So knowing that there are many genes that are of clinical significance in sarcoma that are included in a next generation sequencing panel, I was able to determine that this patient could access that panel. And within sort of a 45-minute online conversation, the clinician had gone from, scratching their head, wondering, what can I do? What more can I do for this patient? To knowing exactly what they could do for that patient and having a result within 3 weeks that could potentially change the course of their cancer. So it's an amazing position to be in, to be able to signpost people to this test directory and give them options for treatments that weren't available before.
So that's what the 100,000 Genomes Project has done. It's actually enabled a set of new tests to be identified, and now you go straight to those tests. It's not like you test each patient's gene. You've now got a set of mutations that are linked that particular.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And this is growing all the time. The test directory is not fixed. It's reviewed continually. There's new versions of it updated on an annual basis. And sometimes there are actually tests that are still in the research domain that patients can access through clinical trials. And eventually these will migrate to the test directory. So it's a really great model for developing the NHS and providing diagnoses, prognoses, and novel therapeutics for cancer patients.
And what are the main types of cancers that genomic testing can be used to improve the treatment for? And is it just cancers, or are there other conditions as well?
Well, my focus is cancer. And so in the Lancashire South Cumbria area, we have a centralised lung molecular testing service. And there are key staff that work in the histopathology, specifically working on molecular markers associated with potential therapies for lung cancer. So where tumours test positive for these particular markers, it means that the tumour is susceptible to immunotherapies. And again, this is another area developing. So where whole genome sequencing can look at a massive amount of data, that opens up potentially a huge number of treatments that could be the patients could be eligible for in future. Whole genome sequencing is available as a standard of care test for sarcoma currently, and acute hematological malignancy, and also for all solid tumours in paediatric cases. We have staff in Lancashire South Cumbria who are working as seconded biomedical scientists to the program, and we're upskilling them at this interface between the genomic service in Manchester and our pathology laboratories, so that they can support the delivery of this new service and this test directory, and guide clinicians through getting access to this, so that we know that somebody who lives in Barrow-in-Furness, for example, will get the same service as someone who lives next door to the Genomic Laboratory Hub. So it's all about making sure eligible people, wherever they may be in the Northwest, get access to this testing.
And what do you think then are the main challenges for integrating genomic testing into the NHS for biomedical scientists?
So this is a really, really good question, Jordan. I'm glad you asked it, because there's been a lot of focus on the Northwest Genomic Laboratory Hub and the hubs in the other regional service, because they needed to get set up first and foremost. So there's a lot of upskilling required there, and installation of new equipment. And then there's also lots of education ongoing, engaging nurses, pharmacists, medics, and you'll know yourself, it's commonplace for the lab staff to kind of like fall through the cracks a little bit. And there's a sense that has happened. But increasingly now, the histopathologists and the pathology staff are being engaged. And we're kind of leading the way in Lancashire South Cumbria with our pilot programme of upskilling the technical staff. So we have a collaboration between 4 trusts in Preston, Blackpool, Blackburn and Lancaster. And our biomedical scientists are taking ownership of these requests and developing tissue processing pathways in this genomic era. And they're undertaking molecular pathology education at Manchester University, which is funded by Health Education England. And all this learning and upskilling is going to create a really great team that can standardise service provision across our network. We're sharing best practice, we're doing site visits, and these people that ordinarily would never have worked together, but we're becoming embedded in the infrastructure locally, regionally, nationally. We're involved in creating new test pathways that never existed before. We're informing decisions about service redesign and doing lots of auditing, and just, I've got a really great enthusiastic and clever team of people distributed around the region, I'm proud to say.
So a lot of areas right now to concentrate on to get this genomic testing service up and running across the region.
Definitely.
Just before I hand you over to Rob for the quick fire round, I wanted to touch on COVID, because I know that during the pandemic you were involved in a large scale initiative to set up the testing service in the region. So
yes,
can you tell us a bit about that, and have you been involved in genomic testing during the pandemic itself?
Yeah. So if we rewind the clock back to March last year, it was only sort of news was just filtering in, wasn't it, that there was this thing happening in China, in Wuhan.
Yeah.
And there was talk in the tea room, this is going to be big. And then in the space of a couple of weeks, a miracle happened in Preston Microbiology, and they set up the technology and introduced validated tests to undertake coronavirus testing. And this was a really important step, because we needed to be in a position where we could send patients down the line of, do they need to be isolated or do they not? And it's a credit to the team there for having done that. So I was brought in because I had some molecular pathology skills already, and so I ended up doing coronavirus testing, and this involved detecting genes specific to the coronavirus. And that came about after the coronavirus genome had been sequenced. So there was a lot happening in the research domain very quickly to get to this point. And so, that went on for quite a few months last year. They were operating a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service, and it was a huge burden on the staff, really tough times. But it's all kind of calmed down now. There's, like an extra 40-odd people were eventually employed to share the burden of that. I'm also involved in a small project called the Excavere study. So this is looking at immune responses of patients to being infected with coronavirus. So it's comparing immune responses of people that haven't been affected with those that have a mild infection or those that have had a serious infection requiring hospitalization. And so I'm doing the DNA extractions on that project, which is being organised by the Immunology department at Preston. So there's still lots of work going on behind the scenes to do with COVID.
And I just wanted to touch upon genomic testing of the coronavirus patients. I mean, how useful is it from a clinical perspective to identify what strain of coronavirus someone is infected with? And have they been doing tests for that reason?
Yes. So a good question again, Jordan. So as you know, viruses do mutate. And every now and again, they'll talk about another mutation in the news. And the reason they know about this is because they are tracking changes in the genome and in samples of patients that have been tested as coronavirus positive. So a proportion of positive patient samples are sent away for that sequencing analysis. But also it's not just about the viral genome, it's about the host genome as well, and how the interaction between those two genomes. So there's been an organisation which has been looking at human genomes, again, of patients either mildly affected or severely affected by coronavirus. And I know they've identified several genes that are involved in predisposing someone to being more poorly and more severely affected. And also, as a consequence of that, they've been able to identify some treatments. So, for example, there is a rheumatoid arthritis treatment that has been repurposed and is being given to coronavirus patients. So, it's incredible where genomics comes in. It's everywhere, and you don't even know it.
Yeah, impacts everywhere.
Yeah.
Sounds really exciting. Okay then, well, that's all from me, and I'll hand you over to Rob now for the quick fire round.
Okay, Deborah, so we now have the quick fire round, which is where I'm going to give you a couple of options and you've got to just tell me which is best, and you can explain why if you want, or you can just leave it as a one-word answer. So, tea or coffee?
Definitely tea, but it must be decaffeinated.
Casual or smart?
Smart. You can never be overdressed.
Online or face-to-face?
Tricky. You can't hug someone online, but I'm a bit introverted. I'll have to sit on the fence there. I can't decide.
You can go 50-50, a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Is the cup half full or half empty?
Full.
And finally, abseiling or bungee jumping?
Sailing. I did a recent abseil for Cancer Research UK and launched myself 150 foot off the top of Liverpool Anglican Cathedral, and it was awesome.
Brilliant. I thought you had done. I saw a picture of you doing it. So that's where that strange question came from. But right, well, that is everything, folks. Deborah, thank you so much for your time. It's really appreciated and lovely to chat to you.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Hello and welcome to this month's LabLife. Now, taking part in public engagement activities has become a really important and rewarding way of raising awareness of biomedical science. Over the years, IBMS members have taken part in activities ranging from inspiring students and school pupils to take up a career in biomedical science to attempting to break a world record. Manchester-based IBMS licentiate Charlotte Felton is especially passionate about public engagement and has recently taken part in several different initiatives. These include founding the popular @InspireBMS Twitter account and taking part in the STEM Ambassador Programme. I spoke to Charlotte about these projects, and we also chatted about her new patient-facing role in critical care science. I started by asking Charlotte to tell us a bit more about herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Charlotte Felton. I'm a HCPC registered biomedical scientist and STP trainee in critical care science. I've also just completed my MSc in Haematology and Transfusion Science, and over the last sort of 11 months I've been working within bacterial screening as a Band 5 biomedical scientist, working on the production of safe blood products and people management.
What is it about public engagement that interests you?
I don't know. I seem to have a lot going on at the moment with that.
Yeah.
And it's just something that I really enjoy. I think really it's come from a place of being quite annoyed that as a biomedical scientist, you're not represented really as you should be, or you're not known about as much as you should be. And that, I think that I can speak for all of us when I say that. So I created the sort of Inspire BMS account on Twitter. That was in August last year, I think. And it was just about bringing us together, networking and sharing ideas, but also for sort of future scientists and students to sort of have a look at what's going on and to connect students to scientists, to if they wanted to ask any questions. We did the day in the life. So we did where with the IBMS, so we sort of celebrating scientists from different backgrounds and within their separate sort of specialisms. And I think it was just, now I call it something that's student friendly, but it's also for professionals, because I think it's really important that we have sort of a voice for students as well, because students aren't always aware of the requirements to become HCP registered biomedical scientists. Some might even be studying a non-IBMS accredited degree and don't realise how that might affect them further down the line. Obviously, we've got the, degree assessment and things like that. But so I can imagine, and some students, I was lucky to get a placement, but some students aren't always lucky to get a placement and to sort of get the registration portfolio done. And I know a lot leave university feeling stressed out and really worried that they can never become sort of a biomedical scientist. But really, there's lots of different routes sort of to get there. They will get there, but it's just about knowing that they can get there and having someone to speak to about it.
Yeah. What kind of content then do you usually have on the Inspire BMS account?
It's a bit of a mix-up, really. So we try and retweet sort of everything that's relevant to students, but also just celebrating people as well, sort of when they get the first Band 5 job, or trying to spread awareness of biomedical scientists, or how we can do little things that might increase the sort of public's awareness of us. So it's a bit of a mix-up, really. I did bring on Tamina and Sophie to help with the account. They sort of retweet relevant things for me, and they might sort of put different things on there too. I feel now the direction it will go in is sort of bridging the gap between students and scientists, and how we can help each other sort of grow and develop the sort of future scientists for the future.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the STEM Ambassador Programme doing, and why is it important for us to spread awareness of the profession to younger generation?
You can go through sort of different routes if you want to be a STEM ambassador, but for me, I think it'd be working with small children. But still, there's still barriers because of COVID. So this is sort of something which is on hold at the moment. But it's sort of working with local schools, even if it's just to provide short videos for assemblies to let you know what a scientist is, because often children have quite a different perception of what a scientist is, what a scientist looks like and what they do, to just sort of everyday people like what we are. It's just so it makes it look more achievable, because it is something which is easily achievable if you go down the right route. And also maybe just little after school classes or clubs sort of to engage with them, and because there is a load of good resources out there for children. I was asked to do a presentation for some undergraduate students. So that was just about my journey and how I got to where I am today, is what I think that they can do to increase the chances maybe of getting a placement or even getting a bit of work experience. And also just reiterating to not worry too much about other people's sort of journeys and progress at their own rate as to what they feel comfortable with, not to have too much pressure on themselves, because often when you're hearing these presentations and you see someone else's journey, it just seems like you will never be able to get there with all the different things that they've done. I mean, I come from quite a, normal background, and I had my first child at 18. I then went to university. So I think it's just sort of letting people know that no matter where you've come from or what you do or what you choose in life, that you can always achieve what you want to achieve, and to not feel too pressured into sort of being the best at everything. So I think that's been the sort of main message from the presentation, really. But the main part of it, the main body of the presentation, is just the routes to HCPC registration. So if students can't get a placement, they can always be an MLA and maybe go through it that way. So it's just talking about the different routes, really.
With all this public engagement work you do, you're full-time, you've been a full-time Band 5 biomedical scientist. You have to balance, I'm sure, childcare and family life.
Yeah.
How do you find the time to do all this public engagement work as well? And what tips would you have for another biomedical scientist who wants to get involved in public engagement?
Everybody asks me this, I don't know how you find the time, but I think it's something that you have to want to do. You can't just do it because you think it's going to look good or whatever. It's something that you want to do. There has to be sort of a main driving force behind why you want to do it. Time wise, I don't know how I've found the time, really. I think it's, to be honest, once you've got everything set up and you've sort of engaged and you decide what route you want to go down with it can become quite easy, but it depends then on the different commitments you take on. So sometimes there might be days on the Inspire BMS account where there's only a few things retweeted, but then some days there might be a video that's made from a scientist background and what they've done. So it just depends. You've really got to be careful with it, because sometimes you can take on too much and become burnt out. But I think you just need to keep the motivation as to that main message as to why you started it in the first place. I literally created just a Twitter account, made a few nice graphics, and then started getting in touch with other biomedical scientists, and it seems to have taken off quite well. So in the year, it's grown to sort of just over 700 followers. But to me, it was never about the followers. It was just about getting people chatting and talking and connecting us all, because we come from all different parts of the country, some even different parts of the world.
So you're just about to move from a Band 5 biomedical scientist in haematology to a patient-facing critical care role. Why are you making the transition?
So I applied for it, and the sort of main driving force behind that was just patient contact, because often throughout sort of doing my registration portfolio, then moving into NHSBT, we're always hearing about patients, and we always know the names, and most times always know what's going on with them, especially patients who you see quite a lot popping up, sort of cancer patients and patients with sort of long-term disorders. And I just wanted to feel more connected to them and feel like I was doing more sort of in person for the patients. That was the main driving force behind wanting to move from the lab sort of to the bedside.
So what actually does the role involve? Because I imagine you're still a biomedical scientist, right? So what is the role?
So I can stay registered as a biomedical scientist with the HCPC, but this is going to be clinical scientist training. The training sort of gives you a broad overview of sort of cardiac, respiratory, critical care, vascular and neurophysiology. but it's really dependent on the trust you're in. So up here in Manchester, I think they quite big on renal replacement therapy, whereas down where I'll be going in Cambridge, it's sort of the UK's leading heart and lung specialist hospital. So we'll see a lot of sort of patients who are needing heart transplants or lung transplants. So you sort of work with the transplant team as well. But I suppose day to day, it can vary really depending on, in what area of the hospital you're working in. So it could be putting in PICC lines, or it could be point of care ultrasound, looking at heart and lung function. You could be training sort of nurses and junior doctors on sort of the medical devices found at the bedside. There's also a bit of lab management sort of involved in it as well, sort of bedside lab management, so blood gas analysis and coagulation profiles as well.
Excellent. Well, thanks for chatting to us about it and taking the time. You can follow Charlotte's Twitter account using the handle @inspire_BMS and find out more about her public engagement initiatives in the show notes.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode. These podcasts are released monthly at the same time the magazine comes out, so whenever a new issue lands on your doormat, head back online to listen to a new episode. And don't forget that these podcasts can be used for your CPD. Take care and bye.